Hello, this is Paul. I've chosen a scene from 300. It's called "What Is Your Profession?" I think this has pretty good dialogue fitting for module one and two. So my goal is to like a play pause kind of thing on this. So we'll just go ahead and get started. This is the scene. It starts where Leonidas is leaving his wife, getting ready to head to the. It's called the Battle of Thermopylae, but it's a Thermopylaean Gap, if I'm not mistaken. That's where he's getting ready to take his small element.
Only the hard and strong may call themselves Spartans. Only the hard, only the strong. We march for our lands, for our families, for our freedoms. We march.
Dark sauce. What a pleasant surprise.
This morning's full of surprises, Leonidas.
We've been tricked. Only over a few hundred. This is a surprise.
Silence!
This isn't an army.
We heard Sparta was on the warpath. We were eager to join forces.
If it is blood you seek, you're welcome to join us.
But you bring only this handful of soldiers against Xerxes? I see I was wrong to expect Sparta's commitment to at least match our own.
Doesn't it? You, there. What is your profession?
I'm a potter.
And you, Arcadian, what is your profession?
Sculptor, sir.
You?
Blacksmith.
Spartans! What is your profession?
So in that little clip right there, that clip was actually shorter than I thought it was going to be. There's a lot of dynamics that hit at once, and the first one I'd like to touch on, I took notes, so I'm going to be looking down so I don't sound completely foolish. So you have two elements coming together, and I think moral order plays a big role in this specific instance. You have the commoners, if you will, the civilians, who kind of like our National Guard. They in a time of crisis, they don their spears and shields, and then you have your element, which is the Spartans, who their only goal in life is to don those spears and shields. So the one thing I touched on in moral order. So you have the Spartans, who are guided by training and love for one another, and that is the basis of their moral order. That is all they live for. That is all they do, is for one another and for combat. So that guides them to who they are and what they hope to achieve. And then you have the civilians, the potter and the blacksmith, who do not have the same, military love that the Spartans would have, but in their moral order guides them to, in a time of need, to pick up, the instruments of war and do what they got to do. So the farmers were guided by, their upbringing. Even though they do not practice combat, they are still prepared for combat. The one thing that is a little different is you can tell the farmers, their moral order might be a bit skewed, as they think too highly of themselves because there's only 300 Spartans. And, they're kind of flustered that that's the best Sparta could do. But what, they fail to understand is these 300, their only goal in life is combat, where these other, the civilians, if you will, their combat is a choice and not a profession. So that's one thing. Personal identities, another one that's big in this little 2-minute clip. You have your soldiers versus, I wrote farmers, but just kind of like your standard civilian fair people versus soldiers. So that's their personal identities. The Spartans are soldiers. They identify as soldiers. They want to be soldiers. Excuse me. That is their only goal in life. Whereas, the air quote farmers, soldiering is kind of a move out of necessity. They'd much rather, not be in combat, but sometimes the nature of the planet we live on, anyone can be thrown into a violent situation at any time. The one thing also I'd like to touch on, and prior military myself, tons of combat deployments, etc., is I kind of view these, farmers, civilians as like a National Guard or a reserve type unit versus the active duty military, with the Spartans being the active duty military. I will say that even though there is that divide for those that, active duty military, the only purpose is combat versus National Guard, those are the people that work in your Best Buys and grocery stores and then, put on the uniform, is there is a divide between us. But at the end of the day, when we both share that uniform, we don't think we still mock each other and tease each other, but that's just kind of the nature of the business. But when, the rubber meets the road, you're still in the same uniform I am, so I expect the same stuff that I would give you, you give me. And, multiple times throughout history, not just in Thermopylae, but, Iraq, Afghanistan, World War II, etc. You've seen your National Guard and Reserve components, perform admirably and sometimes, outperform your active duty units. So that's a big deal to me for this specific clip and this movie and, any type of military type talk is, relational identity. When I was active duty, my friends, my brothers and sisters were all active duty. I didn't have civilian friends. Everybody that I was friends with wore the uniform. Whereas, your reservist and in this, specific case, these townspeople, they're regular civilians. They're then thrust into the uniform. Last point I'd like to touch on is the co-op principle. So this doesn't hit wordy contributions, but there weren't wasted words. So I feel that for the quantity maximum, it was just the right amount of words. Both groups, didn't leave confused. Like, even though this was a quick banner between Leonidas and this guy, there was no questioning what was going on. The soldiers realized who they were, and even though these townspeople kind of came in.
See, old friend,
Sorry.
I brought more soldiers than you did.
Well, my computer's going crazy. So the townspeople, came in a little arrogant, like, oh my God, they only sent 300. And the townspeople was like, I can't believe this. But on the back end, if you're gonna pick a fight or go to a fight, you'd rather have 300 people whose life is combat versus someone who, they are the life of a grocery store person who then thrust into combat. The quality maximum here, I think, is pretty decent. Both sides, depending on what side of the aisle you were on, but both sides, what they said were true to themselves and what they believed. The farmers, thought that they should have sent more troops and that 300 just wasn't going to be enough. So that's why, they made the comments that they did. And also, the Spartans, Leonidas and his crew, they were like, 300 is enough because this is what we do for a living. This is who we are. So, what is said is true for the quality maximum. Both sides were right. And like I said, depending on which side of the aisle you fell on would determine, who you believe to be true. So that is my little, mini analysis video essay. I'm always drawn to military type things. I'm still a contractor in the game. I joined the military in '99, and it's still, I still play to this day. I hope this is what you were looking for. It's a brave new world for me. I'm not used to doing stuff like this. And also, 300's a good movie, but if you really want to see how awesome it is, dive into things in the Battle of Thermopylae. Just brilliant strategic maneuvering by Spartan and the naval forces from Greece. Just, it couldn't have been better. They couldn't have done anything better to push off the Persians as the Persians were invading. So, that's it. Thanks much.